Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 on the history of my album collection. This is the jungle room, as I call it. It's got a lot of my soul, funk, hip-hop music. I'm just going to let you pan around and see some of the interesting decor in this space. And it was all stuff I kind of had collected with my cafe concept in mind, where I wanted to open up this space to share my collection with people, which I'll get into a little bit later. But back here, of course, is my funk, soul, and hip-hop. And that book I had just discussed in the last episode was one of the real reasons that I knew I needed to branch my collection out beyond just the classic rock and the heavy metal and the industrial. And everything was indicating to me that black music was at the root of so much of what white people in America and North America and even Europe were doing. It was evident that Paul and John and Brian Jones and Keith and Mick were hearing Muddy Waters and Sonny Boy Williamson and Willie Dixon. Led Zeppelin was so ripping off blues tracks that I had to acknowledge the source for some of this stuff. And we'll get to my blues records, which are in the other room, but this is my funk and my soul music. Over here, that's for the most part top shelf of 60s soul, and then we got 70s disco on the next shelf, 70s funk, and then on the next shelf we have 80s Prince, Michael, and a lot of SOS bands, Slave type of groups that white people don't really know. And the bottom shelf is going to be 90s New Jack Swing, early R&B, and then over here is going to be the hip hop stuff. It doesn't happen overnight, but I had a friend, my best friend in the world, Justin Thompson. He was a mixed fella. His dad was a jazz drummer from Detroit. His mom was a white gal from England. And we worked together. We kind of connected on music fairly quickly. He's a great musician, great bass player, great singer. We had these great conversations about music. And he came from a very different background than I did, of course. I'm a white Canadian. He was a mixed fella from Detroit. But we still had a passion that we both felt in each other. And we kind of would push each other's boundaries and limits musically and talk about what each of us were into. And he had a really big impact on me because he wasn't trying to tell me or teach me. He was remembering things from his dad, sometimes his mom, but he remembered names from his dad or songs from his dad, artists that he had heard of as a kid growing up, from his older brother and sister. He'd think, oh man, check out the song Cutie Pie. Look for Sherelle. Check out, the names just kept coming, and he would often not know them himself or be able to even put a song to an artist. But I would go to the record store, which I worked next to at my job at the liquor store. Every break I'd go in this record store and start digging for stuff. And slowly but surely, that book I showed you, it starts off with the Motown stuff, because that's what that book covered, because it's a book for white people. And so of course Motown, Marvin, Stevie, Al Green, that kind of stuff's going to be in there. Temptations, the Four Tops, the Supremes, Marvelettes. They covered a lot of that stuff. Gladys Knight and the Pips. They even have like Bobby Womack, Ray Charles. So that book was kind of acknowledging me. It was teaching me. And I was digging and looking and collecting and finding, filling in that information. And I could see that I'm a history guy, so there's a real three-dimensional timeline to the movement of music and the progression of music. And I dug deeper and deeper and eventually collected probably 3,000 records that are soul, funk, 80s R&B, into some 90s, 2000s R&B on the bottom over here. This shelf, of course, hip-hop. The top shelf is pretty much 80s hip hop. The next shelf is pretty much 90s hip hop. The next shelf is 2000s, and then the bottom shelf is kind of more current stuff, hip hop, R&B. But as my knowledge grew and as my understanding of the connections of music got broader, in about 2002, 2001, my buddy Justin, who did some DJing kind of as a fill-in for people, he's like, dude, you got so many records, you should come down to the club and DJ with this spot. And I was like, nah, you know, I mean, I'm not really a DJ, I'm a music guy, I'm a musician, I love good music. And frankly, a lot of DJs drive me nuts. I can't stand when I'm in a bar having a beer with somebody and I hear a Stevie Wonder song, I'm like, oh, I love this song. Then the next thing you know, this fucking asshole's mashing Journey on top of it. You ain't that. You ain't good enough to touch Stevie Wonder's work. I don't want to hear Journey ever, let alone on top of Stevie fucking Wonder. And I would be indignant about him. It's like, it repulsed me. Because it spoke of an ego and a self-indulgence and look at me, look how great I am. I matched the tempos on these two records, and most of the time he was ignorant and asinine. And so the idea of thought of becoming a DJ or going down and helping DJ, I'm like, that's not what I want to do. But he's like, just come down and curate some good music for people. And that's led to what I've done the last 20 years, is create an atmosphere and setting the table in a bar, keeping people enthralled so they have extra drinks, making the mood match the atmosphere and the time of day and the time of year and the day of the week. All these things are a factor. And I became pretty good at it. I had a broad palette to work from. And I slowly started attracting African Americans. 04, 05, 06. And these were mostly in their 20s and 30s at that point. But they would start to come in. And as a DJ, I'm always looking for people tapping their foot, nodding their head, expressing, giving me some energy. Because when some table gives you validation, it makes other tables kind of go, okay, someone knows us, so he knows what he's doing, I guess. When no one's connecting with you, you feel like no one gives a fuck that you're there. So I'm always trying to get that acknowledgement, that connection with people. That's what makes it fun. And a table of 6 black women will give you more energy than a room full of white people if you get them cracking. If you get them going with some SWV and some troop and just some fun New Jack Swing, you know, I'll be sure. All of a sudden they singing and dancing at the table and doing making all these hoops and hollers. That created an energy. And at this point in America, we were Bill Clinton, we were into, you know, I guess we had some George Bush going on. But the racism of today didn't feel that way, to me at least, in the early thousands, mid-thousands. It felt very much like we were making progress. I was in an urban, hip neighborhood uptown where there's a real assemblage of sexuality, religion, race. It's all kind of intermingled. And it almost felt like even the white kids in the bar were curious about Curtis Mayfield. This is the days before internet was everywhere and before everyone had, you know, Shazam on their phone. And I could just feel the palpable connection with the white kids, especially since I was connecting with the black people in the room. It validated me to a lot of the white audience. And it all kind of happened very organically. It wasn't premeditated. It was just this kind of slow evolution of me learning this music, applying what I thought was the fun vibe to have at a club. Michael Jackson's Off the Wall at Friday at 10 o'clock. You can't do better than that. That's a perfect way to start your weekend. So you just make people feel the music for their moment. And the black people started really responding, and that population started to really grow at my shows. And next thing you know, the white people are buying into it because they see me connecting with them. And I started digging deeper and deeper into R&B. And then one of the bartenders at this bar I DJ'd at called The Independent, I was at The Independent 4 nights a week by the end. 4 nights a week I was there bringing people in, creating an atmosphere for a good 2.5 years. I was there for 5 years total. From like 2005 for about 2010. And then I got this offer for doing a Halloween job at a place called Triggs. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say no to a job that pays me $500. Went down there and did this job, and the place needed a boost. It was a real nice spot, but it was kind of isolated in where it was location-wise. It wasn't on a footpath like all the uptown bars were. So you had to be kind of going there to go there. And I took what I knew down there. And there was some middle-class African-American middle-aged people who lived right near that place, who would be in at the bar having happy hour, and they hear this little white dude come in there and playing old R&B. And they're like, this guy's cool. And next thing you know, they're talking about me on their Facebook and in their church groups and texting people. And it started to grow down there, only because it was more of a fancy supper club. It became more of the 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds. So I was getting the 20 and 30-year-olds at the Independent, uptown. I was getting the middle-aged black folks at Triggs on Friday nights. And before you know it, we had 200-300 people in there every Friday night. It grew and grew to the point where you got Saturdays that are going as well. We'd see 500-600 people every weekend. It was pretty ubiquitous across the Twin Cities. People knew about that old school R&B night. It was really a blessing and a great time for me. But it pushed me into a lot of deeper layers of R&B and hip hop. And you learn very quickly that the R&B white people know versus the charts, the R&B charts that the blacks grew up with are very different. And white people know Commodores as Brick House. The black community knows 15 songs. The white community will know Rick James by Super Freak. The black community knows most of the songs he did. You know, it was very different. And there's almost a sense of rejection on the black community of an artist that crosses over too far into the white pop charts. It's hard to be both. Prince and Michael did it, but Whitney didn't. Whitney lost her black following in a lot of ways. And black people never requested Whitney Houston. White girls did. See what I'm saying? And so you learn a lot about the makeup and what people are responding to and what people are singing to. White folks might know the song Fire, dun dun dun, but they couldn't tell you it was Ohio Players. But as I got deeper and deeper into this R&B night with the black community, I started learning more and more. And when you know you're doing your thing, is when you're playing for that room and you don't get a request all night long. Not one person would come up and make a request when I was doing my thing. Because it was so in stride, people were so feeling it. And once in a while someone would come up and be like, you know, I love what you're playing. It'd be great if you could also play. And oftentimes what they were asking for was already on the turntables on deck. Because they could feel the progression of what I was doing. Again, it was never about me. The spotlight was never on me. I was never concerned about me being a DJ and being DJing tricks. It was about playing the right music at the right time, curating an event, making it a fun atmosphere for whoever's in the room and reading that room. A lot of DJs have a premeditated set that's done before they even get to the bar. You can't plan your first 10 songs till you get there and you look who the fuck's in the bar. Like, oh shit, I got a bachelorette party here right now. That means I got to play Usher right now. That means I got to play this right now. So you got to be able to be malleable to the setting, the time, who's in the club, all that stuff. So that led to all the stuff that's in this room. Hip hop, of course, I grew up with in the 90s. Even though I was a metalhead, Beastie Boys kind of makes you cross over into Dr. Dre and the Snoop Dogg and the Tribe Called Quest. All that linked kind of through. But you play for a room full of black people long enough, you'll eventually be asked to play every important song from those periods. And so anything I was missing, eventually people are like, oh, you have ain't nothing going up by the rent bank, and they wouldn't even know who did it. I'd go look it up, like, oh, it's Gwen Guthrie. I'd go to the cheapo and buy it on vinyl, bring it the next week and play it. You know, Tom Brown, Funkin' for Jamaica, all these songs, they started filling in the gaps. I started learning all that stuff. So that's how the hip-hop R&B kind of grew to where it is now, where it's its own room. And I still do a lot of hip-hop, R&B, soul music in my sets. I do a Saturday brunch, and I just got my Friday old school night back. That place I spoke of on Friday night is closed. It got sold to a developer. They managed to get the retail spot back a full 5 years later. And now we're just relaunching it. We did the first Friday last week, got a great turnout. So that's going to be back in the house. I'm really proud of that. But now let's find out how I got into jazz. Check out the next episode. Peace.